How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to Cup of Joe live tonight, Wednesday. It is, let me check here real quick. Oh, yes, it's Wednesday, July 27th. It is 107 degrees here in Boise, so I'm taking a little time to chill. All the good that does. Our topics today: war, and more war. Why? Because that's how you recession proof America. Tried and tested by FDR himself. How do you get out of a depression? The bigger the war, the better. Yes. That's what we're looking at right now, folks. That's what we are looking at. Oh, thanks for attending, James. Appreciate it. And Dolores, love you much. Thank you for joining me tonight. So let's go ahead and hit this off running because I'm ready for the big luau, the Aloha snack bar. Yes. That's where we're headed with this shit, boys and girls. That is where we are headed with this. Okay. $13 billion. $13 billion more has been sent to the Ukraine in order to continue what is a proxy war with Russia here for the United States. We have had people, spokesperson for the military industrial complex, spokespeople for the Biden administration, spokespeople for the Obama administration, and several others over the years that have come forward saying that what is going on in Ukraine right now is extremely important because Russia's attack on Ukraine is an attack on NATO, which of course is an attack on America, and therefore justifies us going through all expenses necessary in order to, I don't know, do whatever it is we're doing. Arif, thank you. Checking in from Liberia, appreciate it. So, who's pinging me? How you doing, Mike? Appreciate it. And Monica, thank you for throwing it up. Let everybody watch this. Let everybody hear it. Okay, reason why. Ukraine. We can talk about what's going on there. Reason why is because Zelensky managed to find time to do a Vogue photo shoot while in the middle of a war. Okay, now this is a war that is escalated to the point where Americans have been recommended not to travel to Ukraine. Yet somehow we still have a full movie set going on, directing, creating propaganda in Ukraine, starring President Zelensky, doing his photo shoot. There's one circulating around with a bunch of money on the table. I'm pretty sure that one's been photoshopped. Yes, and this is really it. Securing resources for the national interests of the USA, the United States of America. Okay, now they're actually doing this really badly. Reason why is because we don't need war in order to fix the problem. However, this is the positive feedback loop. Okay, for those of you who don't understand what positive feedback loop means, is the more times it goes in a circle, the faster and the wider the circle gets. And it keeps going like that until it finally spins itself out of control. This is the positive feedback loop. Okay. A positive feedback loop on a negative issue is a bad thing because it means the negative continues to get worse and worse and worse, particularly as we continue to send more and more money into the Ukraine. Yes, and I'm going to refer to it as the Ukraine, even though that's historically what it was, and it's no longer accurate because Ukraine is the way they want to be identified. This is the Ukraine. It's a pawn in a multinational war in which U.S. interests in the Ukraine have been well established since 2014, probably even prior to that. Issues with Crimea in the primary Russian port in the Black Sea for being able to move oil tankers in and out, being able to access the oil. Ukraine was supposed to be one of the pathways for the use of the oil pipeline, the transcontinental Russian pipeline that would facilitate oil to refineries in Russia for distribution in Europe, basically changing who gets the money for providing oil and fuel to many of these countries. It would severely impact our allies, Saudi Arabia, and several others, if Ukraine was allowed to facilitate these pipelines as well as the Crimean ports. Yeah. Oh, Mike, conspiracy theory. Tinfoil hat time. We can't let Russia capture any records from Ukraine's central bank. And yes, Ukraine has a central bank. It is where the United States has been sending all of our money to, or certain corporate offices. Okay, corporate offices. Now, these are corporate offices of companies that have been owned by Hunter Biden, or partially owned by John Kerry's son, okay, who was Secretary of State in 2014, 2012 to 2000. Well, let's step back. Okay, 4 years, 2008. That was the end of the Bush era. 2008 to 2016 was Obama. 2008 to 2012, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. 2012 to 2016, John Kerry was Secretary of State. His son, while he was Secretary of State, became an officer and a shareholder in several significant corporations the U.S. was operating in the Ukraine and funding. Yeah, so John Kerry, as much as I personally dislike Hillary, this tag team thing that you have going with the Bidens, facilitating corruption and money laundering through Ukraine in order to enrich yourselves. Yeah. No, you're now top tier evil with the rest of them. Done. I'm done with you. You know, I was willing to give you a chance in 2016, in 2012 when you took over, is that whole transition thing between, the Clinton Department of State and the Kerry Department of State. Yeah. Well, and that's one of those things because Libya, and this is actually a reference to what Mike was talking here about. Not those, but here. Couldn't have those Russian pipelines through Syria, Iraq, Yemen, or Libya. Okay, Libyan oil. And yes, we are funding terrorism. We always have. We always will. Well, okay, I shouldn't say always will. No, we always have. Our nation, this flag you see behind me, ever since it had 48 stars, well before that even, and Mike, you bring up a good point here. The root of our current condition is the racial politicians who were too young for World War II and too old for or dodged Vietnam and now want the war glory. Okay, these are the politicians that were somehow between my age and my father's age. They were in the draft dodging. They were able to get out of Vietnam. You're looking at Trump. He had his out. Biden, he had his out. Biden's getting up there in age now. These were people who were not sent to fight the wars like the poor man was. These were not the cannon fodder. These were the fortunate sons, the senator's sons. Yes. Hey, too many of them did not have the opportunity to go to war and earn their glory and earn their stripes. And here we are. People who have never experienced danger know people who have never experienced firsthand the damage of violence to a people, to a community, to, the ones who live, Mike, and the ones who live, the ones who survive, the ones who come back with their souls reasonably intact. The United States is very much a warlike nation. We were founded in blood. Red makes the grass grow green. Colors of our flag are red for the blood we've spilled. Colors of our flag, white for the innocents lost. Colors of the flag, the blue. Yeah. Okay, we continue to fight Biden's war. This is Biden's war. This is Kerry's war. John Kerry's son, Biden's son, Hunter, have been involved in Ukraine since 2014 coup. We've been supporting atrocities. Yes, we have. You can say Putin went in to save the ethnic Russians in the Donbass region. Doesn't matter why he went in. It really doesn't. God. The thin blue line. Oh dear, don't get me started with that one right now, James. Yeah. Yes, you did. War is not good. It destroys communities. Currently, we are in the process. We are going through a major recession. We have people in the federal government, Federal Reserve, coming out and saying, no, it's not a real recession. Yes, the economy is receding, but it's not a real recession. As we look at 41% increases in the cost of our annual food budgets. We're looking at increasing scarcity in food. More and more people can't afford their food security. More and more of the food banks are being utilized across the United States. People are actually learning what it's like to call upon their neighbor for assistance, call upon their neighbor to help them get through these tough times. I'm actually going to come back to that here in a little bit. The reason why is because I really do want to end on a cheery note. I really do want to end on a cheery note. Okay. This is Biden's war, another $13 billion to Ukraine, while the Ukrainian president is doing a Vogue shoot, a fashion shoot in Kyiv. Okay. This war is not legitimate. There is no reason for us to be fighting this war. Okay. We have a president in Hungary right now who's talking about the ethnic purity of the Hungarian people. Okay. I believe it directly translated into race once it actually came out, but he was talking about the ethnic purity of the Hungarians, which goes clear back to their involvement. James. This is an interesting concept here. Okay, food banks no, they're not actually. Food banks are voluntarism. People have donated to the food banks out of their own pockets, out of the goodness of their heart. Most of these food banks are not being run by tax money. The money that funds these food banks was not stolen from you. It was gifted by your neighbors. Okay. Now, this is an interesting thought because the reason why I'm gonna run back on this one here a little bit, James. Welfare. The food banks are paying it forward. Okay, now let's go back and take a look. One of the big programs right now that we're talking about is food lunch programs. Okay, the free lunch. Tonstoffel. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Okay. Reason why is because the free lunch costs somebody. Free lunch is funded. Okay. Now, I know some of you out there, you're going to have to bear with me because I realize some of my watchers right now are strong believers in modern monetary theory and using modern monetary theory in its way to fund social programs. Okay. Put the money in, eventually the money comes back out so that you maintain a static supply of money in the economy. Okay. Well, let's talk about the free lunch program, the free meal program. Okay. This was an agricultural industry bailout following World War II. Okay. J.R. Simplot, one of the moguls of industry here in the state of Idaho, J.R. Simplot made his money, big money. Dude, I could get behind that. Anyway, J.R. Simplot made big money selling potatoes to the United States Army to be shipped overseas and being processed during World War II. Okay, J.R. Simplot made big money, made big industry, essentially became an agriculture monopoly in the state of Idaho as a result of the contracts he was able to negotiate with the United States government, supplying U.S. military troops potatoes, all around the world during World War II. Okay, come the end of World War II, there's no longer a world war. Agriculture that we've been giving to everybody for a specific period of time continues to dry up. Okay, 1940s, 1950s. You're looking at the civil rights movement. 1907, and the free meal programs was basically a kickoff saying, you know what, we're going to provide school lunches. Okay, now mind you, these school lunches weren't free. They were made available in the schools and pay, a notional amount in order to, and of course the rest of the amount, the cost was subsidized by the U.S. government through the United States Department of Agriculture and a number of other things. So the free lunch program was a handout. It was a subsidy to U.S. agricultural industry, like my friend J.R. Simplot. Now, one of the things that ended up happening around 1970s, 1960s, we started seeing an awful lot of veterans coming back from Vietnam. We saw veterans that came back and formed up the Black Panthers. We came back and saw veterans that formed up the Young Patriots. We saw veterans that came back and formed up the Young Lords. These were community activist organizations. And yes, they all subscribed to Marxism. They all subscribed to a version of socialism. Appalachian socialism. This wasn't the kind where the government came and taxed you and said, we are now going to spend your money how we see fit. This was neighbors helping neighbors. The Black Panthers created a free school meal program for the young children in the segregated schools that they were growing up in, so that these children were well fed when they started classes in the morning. So they were able to concentrate on their education and the learning. Yeah, we get that. Never came back, never left. However, there were ones that did. And the ones that did came back with something to say. They came back wanting to fix their communities. And this is one of the things you and I experienced this, James, more than anything else. Reason why is because that free lunch was about community building. These were activists that were involved in sourcing from local providers, local grocery stores, local donors, in order to make sure that these young children in the community were well fed when they started their learning in the morning. Okay? We can't have that. We can't have activists replacing government. We can't have activists replacing Big Daddy. And all of these organizations spend so much time and energy making sure that the children in their communities were being fed. Yeah. Make sure those Idaho French fries get into the school lunch program all across the United States. Make sure Simplot continues his monopoly on potatoes. Dangerous one right now, James. Dangerous one right now, especially with everything that's going on in the state of Idaho. Idaho was a choose life state. We are not anymore. And yes, Michelle, I don't know so much that they started a head start as much as they did do the breakfast, the free breakfast meals. Okay, and that was part of the thing. Once many of these community organizers were able to start doing the free breakfast in these segregated schools, you saw politicians screaming no. Okay, we need those children to believe the United States government, that Big Brother is the one that is providing these aids. And then US Ag got involved and they got their lobbyists and they managed to get their kickbacks in the process, so that what was notionally a relatively low cost arrangement being done by community leaders in order to feed young children in school, creating the free lunch. The free, yes, we all know it wasn't free. Somebody paid for it. But the question is how was it paid for? The free lunch program that was being run by the Black Panthers, that was being run by the Young Lords, that was being run by the Young Patriots in their respective communities in order to make sure that their children and the children of their neighbors were well fed. Yeah. I get plenty of time on that topic. I'll come back around to that on another day, James. But we cannot. Right. Huey Newton, voluntarian of the highest order. He did not once ask for tax revenue. He did not once ask for a grant from the United States government. He did not once ask for your taxes. He did this through community organizing. He did this and found people who gave of themselves out of the goodness of their heart. And he made things happen. Yeah, you may call him a socialist, but he didn't steal your money, folks. That was FDR. That was Johnson. They were the ones that were robbing you blind. Card-carrying socialists like Huey Newton and the Young Lords, Young Patriots, they weren't stealing from you. They were just doing community organizing. They were doing voluntarism. They were doing voluntarian work to make sure stuff got done, make sure that the community was well fed and that the community was being taken care of. Yes, they unionized. Yes, they worked. It was voluntary work. It's community building. It wasn't theft. You got to choose where the money went. You know, the U.S. government wasn't taking your money and saying, we're going to feed school kids with this. We're going to educate kids with this. And then turn around and send $13 billion off to Ukraine and spend another $800 billion on the Department of Defense budget for the next year, perpetuating war, where we continue to bomb. What is it? Okay, we got 8 or 9 right now that we're actively bombing. White tears and fears. Yes, 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 and yes. It's the reason why podcasts like this one, where we actually talk about the history of these organizations, histories of these associations, histories, you know, um, yeah. Oh, God. Speaking of Americans living abroad right now, Californians are moving to Mexico City for cheap rent. U.S. citizens, Californians no less, moving to Mexico City in the heart of cartel land so that they can work remotely while paying cheap rent. Dude, it's upside down world. I, I don't get it. We're talking about dangers of living abroad. Californians living in Mexico City has got to be probably one of the most dangerous, yet they're willing to trade the dangers of LA for the dangers of Mexico City so that they can afford the rent. Living in a van down by the river, James. Living in a van down by the river. Anyway, beside the point. This is Biden's war. Biden wants World War III. Biden wants to be a wartime president. Biden wants a war to end the recession that essentially Trump and himself created. Biden also needs to win this war because of the amount of dangerous material related to him and his family is currently sitting in banks and corporate headquarters in Ukraine. There is no way anybody who wasn't being blackmailed would consent as a national leader some of the things that he's done over the past 6 months. I can't for the life of me come up with a reasonable justification for some of the things he's done. J. Edgar Hoover. Oh, yes. COINTELPRO. Counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO. J. Edgar Hoover. That man worked hard to make sure the community organizers were disenfranchised. And this is one of those things. It's ironic. We talk about conspiracy theories these days. Okay. J. Edgar Hoover's role in the assassination of Kennedy, the assassination of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the disenfranchisement of the community organizers in Philadelphia in '85. His J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, the COINTELPRO, indigenous movements on the reservation. He did mass damage to community building across the United States in order to consolidate power in the FBI and in the offices of the federal government. The reason why is because it was important that white men define the future of America. And yeah, James, it is getting a little dangerous here in the USA. Yeah, moving. Free movement of people is good. It's weird when it's Americans moving to places, freedom of movement, human right. The right to leave a country. The reason why is because borders were designed to contain governments, not impede the flow of people. And you want a particular style of government, if you want a particular organization, you go to where that particular government is. That government shouldn't be coming to you with drones and tanks and aircraft carriers. Yet, here we are. Borders that were designed to contain the United States government have failed. Yet somehow, Americans think that by moving to Mexico City, they can somehow escape the effects of the United States government. Ah, yeah. No, James, the grass is not always greener. Grass is greener over the septic tank. Grass is longer, it grows faster over the septic tank. There's a reason why it's greener over the septic tank. It's also greener where the dog shits. Yes. We always thought the Statue of Liberty was the beacon, the harbinger of hope, the harbinger of freedom. Bring me your masses. Nope. Nope. Break their bones against the rocks. Break their bones against the rocks. I don't blame you. Frank Church was good. Frank Church was real good. Yeah, he got a lot of stuff done. Economically, environmentally. Yeah, in a lot of ways, what he was able to do for liberty, ironically, was he was able to hold several corporations in the United States accountable, things that they were doing that weren't really things they should have been doing. Which was why we were able to make such strides with environmental policies at the time. Then lo and behold, along comes, the end of tort law. We can no longer sue companies for damage. We're dependent upon the state agencies that regulate the companies to assign damages. Yeah. Crazy stuff. Okay. Now, economic recovery. Let's go ahead and discuss that real quick. One of the big things about economic recovery, and we're running into problems with this, reason why is because we're continually seeing infrastructure being destroyed across the United States. Food processing plants, okay? We do live, or at least we did live, in a post-scarcity world. We were able to create more than enough food in order to feed the entire population of the world. Okay, now admittedly, this wasn't just the US, but we have the ability with the agricultural lands that we have to feed the population of the world twice over. Okay, we live in a post-scarcity world. There is no reason all 8 billion people living on this planet cannot be fed and cannot be housed. Basic security. And I'm not going to say it's the responsibility of any one government to make sure that happens. Ooh, journeyman card has a visa. Nice. I like that. And yeah, the keto diet. It's bad for your health anyway. It's a kidney killer. It increases cost of healthcare across the United States. These fad diets, I mean, seriously, some of these fad diets are responsible for some extremely expensive healthcare in the United States. As keto's a big one, protein poisoning, kidney failure. Yeah, and pretty much twice over. The amount of food that we waste here in the United States. I've gone out and I've visited a few of the food banks myself. There are food banks, handing out a week's worth of food every day to, households of 1 and 2. you know, and they still got more, that has to be replaced almost daily because they're being given food that's expired from the grocery stores that have to be given out or destroyed within 2 days of them receiving it from the grocery stores that gifted it to them. And yeah, and this is a big issue. America would never work that hard for itself, let alone the world. And ultimately, that's where we are right now with the American empire. We are the capital. We will not do the work. We don't. We expect somebody else to do it. We expect somebody else to do the hard work. We expect an easy life. We bring in immigrants to do the agricultural labor so that people like you and I can sit behind a keyboard and type on screens, communicate as we do now about the issues of the American work ethic sucks. Matter of fact, I'm about to take off here tomorrow morning, head off to put in 40 hours of hard labor working for one of my fellow campaigners. Help things, yes. Thank you, Sandy. We do appreciate. And Jane, yeah, 80% of American food is not biodegradable. That's the additives that we put to it, the things, the GMOs. Yeah. We don't eat food, we eat processed food products. And you wonder why we're sick all the time. Oh, Michelle. Oh, interesting. Nitrogen sourcing for fertilizer. Okay. Megafauna. Yeah, and one of the things that's important with regards to regenerative agriculture, this is a big thing, is the fact that you're able to put nitrogen back into the soil. Now, there's different ways to do it. One is the types of plants you use. Alfalfa, certain other ones, help integrate nitrogen back into the soil by putting nitrogen nodules in the ground, which then, of course, as a cover crop needs to be tilled under so that it actually breaks up. One of the other sources when you're using megafauna in order to go in and graze during off years, the nitrogen in their crap, yes. In addition to other things, the fact that the megafauna, their hooves break up the soil, they crap nitrogen, they crap fertilizer, that gets spread about by herd movements. Yep, legumes, exactly. And then you have one of the primary methodologies, which is used by Simplot here in the state of Idaho, and that is we mine the nitrogen. We mine phosphates for fertilizer. And of course, those phosphates come with issues because of where they originate. A good friend, Idaho Lorax, loves to talk about, nitrogen or phosphate isotopes, phosphorus isotopes that are used in fertilizer that are mined out of the state of Idaho. Yeah, your potatoes can glow in the dark depending on which fields you pull them from. Nightshade, other than the fact that it's actually a poison, a lot of that's going to be the nature of the farmer and their knowledge and experience with working with it. Reason why is because nightshade can also work as a pesticide, depending on how it's used and integrated into, the system and the way it works. I personally don't know enough about regenerative agriculture, especially when you're looking at third world landscapes as opposed to landscapes here in the United States. One of my friends, Natalie Fleming, uh, former Idaho Senate candidate, ran as Republican this year, has significantly more in depth knowledge into that than I do. And of course, she has her resources where she's learned all her stuff from. Um, This is interesting, Mike. Reason why is, one of the things 20 years ago, when was China going to be a comparable military force or economic force capable of representing a challenge to the United States by itself as a global power? Okay, 2020, 2025, maybe even 2030 was, part of a rolling estimate over the years. Is the Chinese analysts would continue to analyze business development, the military development, and a number of things like that. Now, right now, it's problematic because China and Taiwan, these are the same people, yet there is 75 years difference. They still go back and forth, communicate with family, mainland versus, living versus the communities on the island. The idea of replacing the Republican government of Taiwan, in much way that Hong Kong, the autocratic representative government in Hong Kong that was swapped out for the authoritarian rule, and their migration, their transition from English rule, British rule into Chinese rule, you know. Nightshade's actually a poison. Um, and in this reference, it's used as a cover crop to go in and integrate nutrients into the soil so that it's nitrogen rich and you're able to produce in the other season, in the main growing season, food that's actually nutritious as a result of the nitrogen that's been interred into the ground. Okay. China can grow, but it doesn't. Yeah, that's the problem. China, I don't know if what we do with the human manure is actually efficient as much as it's a process that we've developed. Okay, most communities across it's huckleberries in Idaho. What was it I saw the other day? The canola fields. I was driving through canola country and looking out over the yellow fields, and I actually saw, the Ukrainian flag as I'm looking at the yellow flowers up against the blue sky. But our idea, our process, for human manure is largely related to our septics, not our septics, but our sewer systems being integrated into the entire community. So it's like our entire community. We send all of our gray water, all of our black water into a central processing plant. These are sewer plants. Then treat the water, treat the feces, with combinations of bacteria, fungus, and other things in order, one, to purify the water, and two, pull out the feces and turn it into various forms of manure. Okay. Not efficient. It's chemical intensive. However, we have the energy to do it. Soylent Green. I hear it tastes different from person to person. Yeah, New York Times actually came out with an op-ed on how do poor people taste. Cannibalism, is it for you? Jonathan Swift. A modest proposal, redo. Yeah, James, isn't really conducive to mass agriculture, even though a lot of China was where a lot of early agriculture was actually done. It's where wheat and rice, were first massively agrarian society, but yeah, it was in areas pretty much like the Tigris and the Euphrates that were Sandy, no, no, don't. Bad idea. It's a bad idea. Stop giving those people in New York bad ideas like that. Um, but yeah, early agriculture, all of the major centers of human development developed agriculture at about the same time. Okay, so you had China, you had Egypt, you had the Fertile Crescent uh, here in the Americas, you had the Mississippi River um, region that was ready for agriculture. You had the Aztecs. Agriculture was largely discovered all around the world at approximately the same time. Okay, um, some of it was better than others, of course. China did well, Egypt did well, Mediterranean did well, Fertile Crescent did well, at least until climate change happened. Yes, climate change has been around for a long time, folks. Just get used to it, accept it. Um, okay, that said, we can terraform, so don't think that humans can't affect climate. We can. And terraforming does work. We can do it. We have done it. We will do it again. We can save the planet, folks. Jim, I'm a doctor, not a farmer. No, we can save the planet. Um, yeah, China's regreening. They're working on it. Gaddafi was working on it with his agriculture system. One of the things about the Green Revolution in the 1970s was when we sent the Army Corps of Engineers and a bunch of industrious, you know, engineers to support the building of the largest dam in Afghanistan. That was to provide irrigation, created a reservoir and created irrigation. It created one of the most fertile regions of Kandahar, of Afghanistan. You know, uh, Kandahar and Helmand provinces were irrigated by these. You know, dude, agriculture. They were doing good right up until the time the Russians decided to invade and kick the Americans out. Once we went in and we turned the dam back on, once we started generating hydropower from that dam, and once we started working the irrigation again to irrigate Helmand province, dude, the opium, we helped them grow with the agriculture. Once we turn the irrigation back on, man, Helmand and Kandahar province responsible for 80% of the illicit opium production globally. We did that. That was us, man. That was us. Anyway, um, no, honestly, if and this is right, James, if we could just stop the U.S. imperial machine, stop this, everything is ours mentality of the system. As long as we can stop this concept of global homogenization, okay, global homogenization is the Disneyfication of the planet, making all of us the same. Okay. There's reasons we are not all the same. Each one of us came from a different culture that was specific to the area in which we grew up in, specific to the task we were given. Um, yes, the imperial machine and the military industrial complex. Okay, global homogenization is not in our best interest. We need the varieties of culture. We need the varieties of approach. Here in the United States, we look at the different concepts of we have urban America, we have rural America, we have suburban America. Each one of them has their own specific role. Okay. Urban America provides our industry. Rural America provides our food. Detroit provides cars and automation. Yeah. are technocrats in Southern California that have been moving all over the place, looking for remote work that pays so they don't have to pay the outrageous rent. Uh, you know, they have a role that contributes to the overall, yet global homogenization. The idea that we can all be alike, that we can all be one with the same education, with the same training, with the same background, that we can plug and play any one person into any other job anywhere around the world. James, I'm going to send you off to Hong Kong and you're going to replace someone there. Done. No, and it's not quite the way it works. Not really. And yeah, James, we did have to give it away. Nobody wanted to steal it. It's simply not profitable. Even at $5.50 a gallon of gas, it wasn't profitable enough to go back to fracking in the United States in the time frame that was allowed during this latest boom in oil sales. Continues to be a problem. Now, let's go ahead and finish this on the strong note here, folks. Reason why is because this is important. Okay, global war. One of the things that was important during World War II. The reason why is because all the agricultural production was being focused on sending to troops in Europe and Asia, in the Philippines, being shipped on ships. We had a concept here in the United States called the Victory Gardens. Yes, the Victory Gardens. Okay. This was everybody. Everybody was asked to put a garden in their backyard, manage it and tend it, and share the produce with their neighbors so that the food that was raised and grown on the farms could be sent to the troops abroad and feed the nations that couldn't farm because we were bombing them into the Stone Ages. Yes, we're sending them grain so they didn't have to grow grain. They could grow the cash crop, opium. Opium sold. Opium made money. And freedom fries, yes. Idaho freedom fries. Yes. Okay. Now, back to Victory Gardens. Okay, this was to feed the communities back home because most of the food was being sent overseas. It was being sent to feed the troops. Okay, so you were raising gardens at home in order to share with your community. You could specialize. You could do broadband. You could do holistic. There are several gardens across the United States right now. These do require work, folks. They do require work. You cannot raise a garden for as cheap as you can go to the store, even at current inflated prices, as cheap as you can go to the store and buy tomatoes. Okay. Yet. Your time investment, your labor investment, the materials you need in order to make sure the greenhouse is functional, a number of these things, which is why an awful lot of people consider it a hobby, an expensive hobby. Well, when we start running into food shortages, those victory gardens, those expensive hobbies, will be very, very good investments. The reason why is because the food that you will be eating from your garden in order to purchase after the systemic destruction of food production facilities and the reduction in gas in order to transport that food across a number of locations is going to continue to increase the cost of food, making your time investment in those gardens very worthwhile, and making sure that you and your neighbors continue to eat and are able to continue to produce and support each other through what's coming. Okay. Take some time. Victory Gardens. It's an idea. Lots of blueprints out there in order to maximize the space you have. Ways to handle nutrients, nutrition, the different kinds of beds, raised beds, containerized beds, The containers are particularly good for potatoes, especially if you know how to do the tire ones, where you just sort of keep building the tires up, and then when it's all done, you lift the tires up, and then all the potatoes just, yes. But potatoes are very water intensive. So the things you need to keep doing. Where did all the wild apple trees go? 500,000 varieties of wild apples. It used to be heirloom apple seeds all across the United States. Pretty much went away in order to get uniformity of crops and consistency so that they can be properly maintained by machines. Yes. Oh man, Michelle. Yeah, U.S. aid and some weapons. No, James, it's USA. U.S. aid is all weapons. Um, Gardens, no gardens. Lots of manicured lawns. It's probably going to change as homeowners associations start getting real sensitive about the cost of their food. And that's actually an interesting topic. I may consider that over the next week or two, considering talking about victory gardens and some of the different things that are going on with those across the United States, particularly as you're looking at urban garden revivals. There are certain communities that have gone in, and where you've had deserted strip malls and other areas, they've gone in and cleaned up the asphalt off of the top. They've cleaned out medians between former roads, and they've actually turned some of these areas into fairly decent food producing, food quality gardens. Um, right? Yankee Workshop, do it yourself, post World War II, self reliance coming out. And you had women that were working in the factories that ended up going back home, and men coming back from the wars that were going into the factories that were used to doing the jerry rigging. Yes, the jerry rigging. Jerry, German, racist term. It was about substandard quality whenever we encountered something that was fixed by the Germans in order to get it functional during the war. And yes, there was a real Johnny Appleseed. There was a real Pal Bunyan. Were they everything the tall tales made them out to be? No. Stories like that, tall tales, were made to be larger than life in order to give us heroes, give us people to look up to, give us people to aspire to. Yes, there were people like that that were superhuman. Yes, they were. They were superhuman. We got people like that today. We got superhuman people today. Take a look at Shaq. Take a look at Bjorn, strongest man in the world. You know, the mountain. Yeah, we have superhuman people alive today, superhuman people capable of achieving amazing feats. We've always had them, we always will. There will always be that 0.1% population that is just there to be idolized. The goal. Some of it's its brains, some of it's its brawn, some of it's its flexibility. Some of it's simply their ability to be aware of where they are in life at any given moment. Yes. Yes, we do have a real garden state. Real as Paul Bunyan. Thousand Island dressing, yes. All because Paul Bunyan tried to fill in a lake. That was the rumor, anyway. Okay, victory gardens, folks. That's how we defeat the New World Order. Learn to feed yourself, learn to feed your community. It's the do it yourself technology. It's learning how to fix and repair the things that we need, that we use so often. Things like this. Okay. We don't need to buy a new one. It's quite possible in the near future we may not be able to buy new ones. We may have to repair what we have in order to continue function, in order to continue. because we will have to rebuild the infrastructure here in the United States in order to build the creature comforts that we have become accustomed to. Okay? Believe it or not, everything that makes this work the way it works can actually be mined here in the state of Idaho. We got the rare earth minerals that can make that function. We don't have to buy the materials from China. It's cheaper because China doesn't have the same regulations about mining the minerals from the planet that we do. Doesn't mean we can't do it here. We got everything we need except the infrastructure to refine it. Okay. With that, folks, thank you. I appreciate the comment, Dolores. And yeah, absolutely, James. America does have it all. The United States does have it all. We have the ability to be self-sustaining. We have the ability, once we recreate the work ethic in the American workforce, where we are dependent upon ourselves, once again, rather than dependent upon the production from other nations. Yeah. We didn't mine it because we were sending somebody else in to mine it. The idea was it was all supposed to go to China anyway. China mined it. Thank you, Dolores. Remember, folks, family, friends, community. As long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. Love you guys. Stay out of trouble. Build a garden.